Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Women's Health Tech Wednesday event. I am very excited to be your host today. My name's Amy West, and I am principal of the HIT Lab Advisory Services. And I am very excited today to be joined by two amazing featured speakers, Helene Rutledge and Rupa Bahri, who are with Birthvue. But before we jump into it, I would like to share the announcement. Next week, we have our our Spring Innovators Summit in New York City from May 6th through May 8th. We hope that you can attend and be a part of the conversation. It's going to be a great experience and a great 3 days with very innovative topics and leaders and subject matter experts in the digital health space. If you're able to join or interested, we did share the, you can go to the website or click on oh my gosh, I'm forgetting. It's the scan code to join, which we will play again at the end of the session. So anyway, but the reason we're here today is to have a great conversation with Helene Rutledge, who is president and COO of Birthvue, and Rupa Bahri, who is senior advisor to the Birthvue organization. And we are going to be talking about maternal health. And specifically, our segment today is titled Empowering Maternal Health Through Digital Innovation and the Digital Innovation Format. And so before we jump into the conversation, I'd like for Helene and Rupa to give a brief overview of their background and their bio, because they can do a much better job than I can. So Rupa and Helene, could you just take a moment to share your backgrounds?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, Helene Rutledge, co-founder and president of Birthvue. My career has been in healthcare innovation with senior leadership roles at companies like Avon, Pfizer, Nature's Bounty, and GSK, where I led global open innovation for consumer healthcare. And I was also co-founder of Mend Nutrition, where I designed the Upgrade by Mend Joint Replacement program. And I have an EMBA from Stern School of Business and a chemical engineering background.
Thank you. Rupa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rupa Bahri. I was a former president of our Canadian business unit for Haleon, which was a consumer health spinoff from GlaxoSmithKline. I am now a senior advisor to Birthvue, as Amy mentioned. I've had over 20 years of commercial innovation and consumer health experience, and I've been on a number of different boards in this space as well. My educational background is I studied biomedical and electrical engineering at Johns Hopkins, and I have an MS and MBA from MIT and Harvard.
Well, it's an honor to be talking with you today. You both have really impressive backgrounds, and really appreciate the fact that you're focusing so much of your time and talent in the digital health space, specifically in the women's health space. And the technology component, we're going to be talking about that today, is very important. But the work that you're doing with the technology is always centered around the patient. We can't forget the human being lies at the center of all of this. And I think you clearly do a great job of pulling this through. So, we often talk about the need for patient-centered care. What does that really mean in the context of maternal care and maternal health?
Sure.
Rupa, do you want to take this?
I think that I'll take that one. So in maternal health, patient-centered care has to recognize that every pregnancy is different. Even the same woman in different pregnancies has a different experience. And a piece of it is it's the unique social, emotional, and physical environment, not just the clinical setting or the biology. And the technology has to reflect this full reality, even the cultural context, her support systems, and designing our systems with that holistic lens lets us shift from just treating symptoms to truly empowering women on their own terms, which increases compliance and improves outcomes. And we have to remember that every woman already carries the wisdom of her own body. So innovation's job is to listen, empower, and help carry the load, not add to it.
I think that's very well said. And it's so important, again, in healthcare in general, to make sure that everything we do is very patient-centric focused. And so, Rupa, obviously, you've done a lot of work in this space with the consumer health markets that you've been working in. When we think about empathy, what role does empathy play in designing truly impactful, meaningful solutions for women who are pregnant?
Sure. Amy, I think that true innovation only comes from really listening to consumers and mapping their journey. And I've seen this time and time again, having run businesses in the US and in Canada and being part of a very global company. That's always been the true source of innovation. And empathy is what really drives access and usability, because women's needs often fall outside of traditional R&D filters. So if you're not doing that upfront listening to the consumer, mapping out their journey, you're really going to affect usability of your end product.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to think about it. And so obviously the importance of undertaking that sort of consumer focus, that patient-centric, and that empathetic approach is very important. But in addition to that, it goes beyond just being a female or a woman. We have to be thinking about how they live their lives every day and things like the social determinants of health. Can you talk a little bit about how you take those factors like housing, transportation, food security, or insecurity, stress of everyday life, not to mention the changes that happen with pregnancy? How can digital technology play a role to better understand and support those very personalized social determinants of health and use that data to help create more equitable, democratized access to care?
Sure. It starts with building the tools and assuming that it's a variable environment. Women's lives are all different, and in different socioeconomic areas that you may have to design for low bandwidth environments, for lack of access to technology, lack of knowledge of, different levels of technology. So the data entry needs to be flexible and easy, and the predictive insights drawn have to really help the providers act earlier. But on a grander scale, it means aggregating the real world data to help influence policy. If the platforms are able to reveal where the care gaps are, then we can help make these invisible needs visible and move from individualized care to systemic change.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and something that technology can do better than the sort of the human application. So I think that's a great example. So Rupa, you've spoken about inclusive growth as we think about equity again. What does it take to build scalable health solutions that don't leave the vulnerable populations behind?
Yeah, it's a great question, because if you really want to do this right, you have to build for flexibility and trust. And, I think a lot of people, they start out saying, we need to build for where the system expects a consumer or patient to be, and then build from there. But you can't do that. You need to meet people where they are, not where the system expects them to be. And that will be your key to really building a scalable health solution that's inclusive.
Yeah, I love that concept of the idea that, make the person the center of the solution and not the other way around, where you're required to have to go somewhere or go to a clinic or something. Like, the more you can bring it to the individual based on when, where, and how they want to engage with it, I think the more successful we will be. And again, technology can enable that really nicely. So again, talking about women, and as you're developing different solutions and things like that, we touched on it a little bit already, but as a woman, you're the only person that really knows yourself the best, and you have your voice, and you need to be heard. And oftentimes, that's gone a little by the wayside in certain situations. So, for example, Rupa, studies show that women's reports of pain when talking with their clinicians are many times downplayed.
Yeah.
How can we create systems that take the voice of the women, what they're sharing, very seriously from the start and not disregard it or downplay it.
Oh, I wish this is so important. And I hope everyone really starts thinking differently about this. The more we can spread the message, the better. We need to include women's reports or women's symptoms, women's experience in the initial design requirement. If you don't include it in the initial design requirement, your solution isn't solving it. So if you don't think about it up front, it's never going to get solved for. And this is where I think we've been failing. We need to restore credibility and responsiveness to what matters, and elevating their subjective experience through tech enablement and tech-enabled validation is really the way to go. I think this is how we're going to be able to mass scale it and really change and shift this paradigm that has been longstanding.
Yeah, to your point, scaling is going to be really important, and technology can be a key enabler if we do it the right way, but we have to be listening to the voice of the woman to do that. And to that point, Helene, how do digital platforms support this ability to intervene earlier when symptoms might otherwise have been dismissed or downplayed?
Yeah, so this is what's so exciting to me is that when we have the opportunity to collect data and really have access to like a lot of data and the ability to analyze it with AI, we start capturing these small signals over time. So the digital platforms then create this cumulative voice of data that's harder to ignore than just a single symptom that a woman has that's easier to get dismissed. And this like longitudinal record of patterns of, vitals, pain ratings, things like that, provide evidence for earlier, more proactive care. It also allows ultimately to risk stratify the population and give women a more personalized plan so that they know what to do for their health and their situation. It also gives women the language and confidence to advocate for themselves backed by their own data.
Yeah, and so Helene, to kind of continue on that topic, all you're talking about with this collection of data to give us more insight to understand how things are happening with the individual, it's really kind of creating that path to wellness and focus on wellness versus our traditional sick care model that we see here in the United States. So it's a really great opportunity to start to shift that paradigm. And I know you've been a huge champion of a wellness first approach, particularly in the maternity care space and the in-home contraction monitoring. Why is that framing so important and powerful?
Sure. Wellness first really opens the door for women. It invites women to be proactive and engage with their own health without needing a clinical referral or really just being bombarded with medicalized language. We've heard from moms themselves that when they talk to their doctors, sometimes they feel like they're dumb, that they don't want to ask these questions, and they end up keeping their concerns to themselves, which raises anxiety levels. And when we start with empowerment and education rather than diagnosis, we build this trust. Trust is essential. We normalize self-monitoring and create a foundation for more advanced interventions later on a timeline that women themselves can control. And trust is so important. I just saw this morning that Rock Health research says that while women are online health super researchers, only 7% trust what they find. So for us at Birthvue, by curating doctor-recommended education and care plans, we're building a community of trust so that we're curating that information and women know that we're the place to go for stuff that they can believe.
Well, thanks for sharing that statistic. I had not seen that yet, but I think that gives us all a lot to think about. And it just reinforces the need to build better trust in these areas. So congrats on all you're doing to support that with the work that you're doing with Birthvue. Rupa, from a commercial lens, what does a wellness first strategy help unlock in terms of market entry, again, the trust building, and also the much needed scaling of effort?
Yeah, I think, Amy, in my mind, having done this many times, it really normalizes the use and expands reach. And it does so in a way that completely removes the friction in the situation. And I think you're speaking in consumer language when you have a wellness approach. You're speaking in terminology that people can relate to. And there's such a human element here that's so important. And that's really what removes that friction and normalizes the use and expands the reach. I think if done right, a wellness approach creates the beachhead for future medical validation. It starts saying, hey, there's a signal here. It's separate from the noise. Let's pay attention to this. I think it's really powerful.
I agree. And I personally would love to see a shift in the US healthcare system to more of that well care health management approach versus, again, our current sick care model. So couldn't agree with you more on that. And, hopefully we'll continue to see much more progress in this space. And I'm excited how technology, again, can enable that. So thinking about the future and looking ahead, I have a question for both of you. Maybe Helene, if you could share your perspective on this question first, but what's your vision for the future of maternal care, and what should we be building toward from your perspective?
So one of the reasons why I'm so excited about digital health, and even starting with my previous company, is that democratization of care can come from digitizing best practice. So you think about care in home, you think about like how we know that some doctors, there are these subtle intangible things that they do better. So if there's a way to learn about that and digitize it, then we, at a lower cost, we can get it to many more people. So when you think about maternal care, we've turned childbirth into a medical experience instead of the natural thing that it is. So when you think about moms giving birth at home, caring for these moms is protecting our next generation. And we want to be able to leverage the data that actually represents the diversity of their experiences. And also that across race, income, geography, and that way we see these risk factors to move towards personalization. So personalization will then really unlock the lower cost of care, the ability for a mom to stay, home longer. And, these platforms that we build, they'll have the ability to monitor and listen to, so that we can see these symptoms coming earlier and not just track things, but empower women.
I think that's fantastic. And I love how you've also kind of summarized a lot of the points that we're making along the way related to the need for that understanding the woman individually. And by doing that, you're supporting greater equity and the ability to have a better experience and outcome for the mother and the baby and the family in general. So I think that's wonderful. Rupa, what could you share your perspective on this as well?
Sure. My vision for the future of maternal care. Well, listen, we talked about our professional backgrounds as we started, but we all also have personal backgrounds. I am a mom of an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. So this isn't that far away from my mind. And if you ask any mom, they remember their birth story. And they remember how scary and daunting it is as you're going in and, everything is new and everything is different. And even as someone who's in the industry that's healthcare related, it was that way for me. And I just really, if I take a step back, I think if we can develop ecosystems of care with patients at the center, if we can build towards scalable, affordable, and trusted systems, where we are being human first, that's what's really going to make a difference in maternal care. And that's why I love the work that Helene and Roshane and the team are doing at Birthvue, and why I wanted to be a part of it. I think it's really fantastic, and I hope we can build towards that future.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you were finishing that up, it really does, Birthvue really hits the bullseye there. About really, again, putting the patient at the center, or the mother at the center, and treating her as an individual and meeting her specific needs during a very vulnerable time in her life and in her family's life, and really being able to create that trust and support that ends up in a very, very positive, healthy outcome for everybody. And Helene, did you want to share something else?
Yes, I did want to say, first of all, thank you so much to Rupa. But to point out more, again about our backgrounds is that we both have like consumer healthcare DNA in our experience and our background. So much of it is really understanding the patient or the consumer's insights, and we listen to moms. So one of the things that we have coming up actually in May is a story slam where we're inviting moms to come and tell their birth stories, because these are the things that we can listen, we can hear the pain points, we can understand, what matters. And that's really how to design these systems with moms at the center.
That's awesome. Are you able to share some information about how people can maybe hear about this or
Sure.
learn more?
Yes,
Because I think that's great.
Yep, it's a small group to start, but we're also working with a filmmaker, so we'll be able to document all of this nicely.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Well, listen, I want to say thank you both so much. It's really, like I said, it's an honor to be talking with you, and the work that you're doing is so impressive, and really changing. I love what you said, Helene, about how we've turned the birthing process into, it was a clinical experience when we've taken out, something that really should not be. It really should be a more natural, hopefully, non-clinical experience if possible. And so I think that with Birthvue, you're obviously trying to do that and make that happen. And, I'm someone who's always been very passionate about digital health for many reasons, but it's always so important that the digital is just an enabler. It's all about the human being. And we have to make sure that we're positioning the digital, the technology, the data, whatever, with the patient at the very center. And I think you're doing a great job with that. And I think you've shared some great examples of how you're doing that with Birthvue and the work that you're doing. And I also appreciate what you're doing with your technology to ensure that you are creating as personalized an experience as possible, taking into consideration not just the fact that I'm a mom having a baby, but I also live in this community and this is my background. You're taking into consideration all of those social determinants of health factors that really play a huge role in having a good health experience. So that's really important as well. And all you're doing to pull through, just a greater wellness focus versus, sick care model or something along those lines is so great. Ultimately, building up a relationship that creates trust, confidence, and a better overall experience for the human being. So thank you for all you're doing. And I would like to invite our listeners today, our community, to continue this conversation. It's so important, especially with the maternal care space, with moms and babies and the future of our communities is so important. So please feel free to reach out to Helene, Rupa, myself to continue these conversations and to keep track of the great work that they're doing with Birthvue, because it truly is amazing. And so, I think, to kind of sum it all up, to transform maternal care, we have to first believe women, believe in them, listen to them, hear their voice, build with them based on their experience and their voice, and trust what they already know about their bodies. And by doing that and doing a better job, like Birthvue is doing, we're going to have much more success and a much healthier community. So thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. And thanks to all the folks who have joined us today. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.